Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, you know the drill. Here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to take a trip around the state, and we're going to talk to the best fishermen at each stop along the way. We'll work our way down the East Coast through Islamorada, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle. First off, we want to hear about their fishing. We want to hear where the fish are, where the bait is, how this time of year is going for them. February is rolling along. But then I've got a question for each one. I want to kind of get a State of the Union, all right? Well, the president's got a big State of the Union coming up. I want to get one about the fisheries in our area. In Northeast Florida, Captain David Voorhees, he's a redfish specialist. How's it looking? Is he encouraged by the limits? Is he discouraged by the number of boats on the water? We're going to have those kind of questions for each one of the guys tonight. So settle back, pour yourself a cold drink, and let's talk fishing. We're going to start it with a quick trip to Nosara, Costa Rica to check in with our old buddy Craig Sutton. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats. You want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company. That's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. Let's get this evening started with a stop in paradise, my favorite place in the world to fish. Boy, if I had one more day to fish, it would be awfully hard to pass up Nosara, Costa Rica. It's where we're going to check in with one Craig Sutton. Craigie, how we doing?
We're good, Ricky.
Oh,
real
good,
man. Just been good, consistent biting Costa. Got a little slow middle week this last week, but it was about time we had a couple, little, and it wasn't that slow. They had a sailfish come up and a marlin. They kind of came up. They never got the pitch bait to them, and they had two nice mahi in the 20s, and then yellowfin. But that was the slowest day.
Craig, that's why I always, when people ask me, and I get asked all the time about going to Nosara, how many days should we plan to fish? And my answer is always the same, as many as you can,
right.
Because I don't care where in the world you are. I've got a good friend that one time booked a boat in Dominican Republic and fished 5 days, caught one white marlin. I mean, it can happen anywhere. And
Superman has his kryptonite.
That's exactly right. Mine just happens to be water. As long as I'm not fishing, I'll do okay. It's once I actually get there that I struggle. But in all seriousness, you fish as many days as you can to avoid those. So toward the end of the week, did it seem to pick up some for you?
It did yesterday. Yeah, and today I just got my pictures in from today down there. So, yeah, it's back to the same thing, 3, 4, 5 mahi, all gaffers, 15 to about 35 is standard.
Oof,
we're getting
solid.
A couple of them in the high 30s. Every once in a while we'll get those monsters. But the yellowfin, we did catch a nice rooster this week and lost a couple of them that same day. But, it's been good. I mean, I got no complaints. The clients are happy too, and so am I.
Good deal. Good deal. Craig, I got a quick question for you. Costa Rica, as you and I have discussed many times, is so far ahead of the United States when it comes to their conservation ethic. But at the same time, more and more people are going down there every year and taking advantage of the great fishing. What do you view the future as? Do you think that the conservation ethic in Costa Rica is going to continue and you're going to have plenty of fish 10 years from now? Or are you worried about what the future brings?
Well, Costa Rica they're super far ahead of everything else in the world, including America. But I think it's good. I mean, I think it's real good, but, you also don't know about the unforeseen circumstances.
Sure.
Like somebody develop a new way to commercial fish and harvest them. That was pivotal Costa Rica when they banned those big seine net boats and pushed them further out. And that was huge. We were we caught them a few years ago inside, and just it was amazing to me. We fished beside them for about 3 days that year, and here we were taking 7, 8, maybe 9, 10 yellowfin out of the schools. They were it was thousands and thousands and thousands of fish. It was that is an extremely effective way to fish for yellowfin. I mean, I can't really call it fishing, but it's an effective way to harvest yellowfin. So as long as they don't, come up with some new method, I mean, it's I think we're good to go down there. But I will say that they're so proactive. They do studies on their per hour or per day's fishing and how many sailfish you release and marlin and stuff. And we've seen a little taper off of the sailfish, but as the sailfish tapered off, we've gotten better marlin bites. So I don't know if that's just a normal process or part of the, the schools kind of subsiding a little bit, but, we don't do the snatch release. And I got a real problem with that and always have it. Everybody judges this. I'm not judging somebody that does snatch release on sailfish or billfish, but we have always, in all our local boats, we pull the fish up, we take the hook out, we revive them, and we let them go, when they're settled down and they've got their strength back. And that's been the mantra of our port there in Garza, and I like that. I don't like that snatch release, and we just don't do it. But I think that's going to harm the resource if nothing else.
I see. Is there ever any tagging in the Pacific sailfish?
Yeah, there's some guys that have a lot of swanginess and stuff, and we should be involved in that tagging. We really should, but we're kind of busy doing what we're doing. But I know bringing the sailfish in and taking the hook out and revive them, that's the way you're supposed to do it. That snatch release, I am absolutely, without a doubt, sure that some of those fish die.
And I want to clarify. I want to clarify when you say taking them in, taking the hook out. I've spent plenty of time on your boats. He's not talking about bringing the fish in the boat, which, oh, by the way, is illegal anymore. That fish has to stay in the water. You're talking about pulling them alongside and getting the hook back.
That's right. That's right. As opposed to people grabbing the leader and breaking the leader, and a lot of times it'll break part of the hook off in the fish, and and I think those hooks, infect the fish and they die down the road.
Well, I think a lot of times if you snatch it too, which is one of the reasons I like using 40-pound test leader on Atlantic sailfish. If he just gets his weight on it, if you take a wrap and he gets his weight on it, that 40 will break, and that's fine. But boy, those snatch releases, they can rip a stomach wide open. They can rip a throat wide open wherever that hook is. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we got to conserve the resource.
You got
God's creation, brother. That's part of the Costa Rican mantra too.
And we are in charge of it. Thank you, my friend. Let's talk to you next week if that's okay.
Look forward to it, Ricky. Thank you.
All right, Craig Sutton from Nosara Fishing. All right, it's time to hit Florida. We're going to start up in the northeast corner with the guru of inshore guides in northeast Florida, one Captain David Voorhees. David, how we doing, my friend?
Hey, man, we're doing pretty good up here. We're still on that roller coaster. I think we're going to ride it a little bit more. But the good thing is the water has really cleaned up. We really got some good sight fishing going on right now. And when you can get those sunny days and that high tide about the middle of the day, push back into some of those creeks or back on the flats, you will see fish. And there's some really good sight fishing going on right now. A lot of the guys have reported some really good trout down towards the St. Augustine area, some good numbers and some good sizes. And, the flounder scene is it's been good, but it's hit or miss. I think we've about seen it for the flounder until they start coming back in again. Sheephead, they're picking up. We're slowly picking up on the sheephead bite. And that's another one that's it's hit or miss on the sheephead right now. But the red drum, we've really been doing good. North of the St. Johns River, They've been seeing schools of nice numbers of reds at the low tide. Low tide this week seemed to really produce a lot of good reds. Now, the following week coming up, we're going to have those high tides happening in the middle of the day, which is what I like, and that's going to give you these reds up against the grass and up on the mud flats.
So you would rather sight fish those fish at high tide, David?
I like the high tide in the middle of the day when it gets good and sunny. It seems to me like I do like to go up and see those fish. Now, there's been some times where I've gotten up and I even tell my clients, if we spook these fish, just, don't try to throw at them. You want to be way, way up ahead of them. But a lot of times, if I spook these fish, and we did this a couple of times this past week, we just backed off and we went down, we fished another, came back 30 minutes later, and those fish had settled in, and we ended up catching a couple more out of that spot. So, it seems like on these higher tides, to me, I like the fish when they're feeding up close to that grass and along the edge. There's little runouts that are running. Now, the low tide seems to be the fish are bunching up. The fish are still bunching up. But that low tide, boy, they can be spooky, really spooky.
Yeah, stealth is it there. There's no doubt about it. David, let me ask, now redfish, you and I have been friends for a long, long time now, and I know that you catch trout and you catch flounder and you catch sheephead, but redfish are your bread and butter. Give me a state of the union. I was thinking about redfish today, and we've lowered the limit down to one per fish, and we've taught, or one per person, excuse me, and we've taught more and more and more people about releasing their fish, how to do it well, the importance of doing it, the fact that we're fishing on a very finite resource. It seems like our conservation ethic is getting better, but on the other side of the coin, there's more of us every day. 1,000 people a day move to Florida. Give me a crystal ball, David. How do you see our red fishing in 5 years compared to right now?
Rick, I feel pretty positive about it. I think we're doing pretty good. I'm so happy we went back to the one redfish per person, and and just talking with a lot of the guides, I think we had a lot of young guides move into the area, or not move in, but start fishing the area. And man, when you're young and you're just starting out, it's real important, boy, that you go out and you catch a lot of fish. And I think as you get a little bit more mature, you start realizing that, you got to protect this resource. This is, you can't fish it out. You've got certain areas and you got to protect them. You don't want to beat up certain schools of fish, and they sort of learn. So a lot of these younger guys, from what I'm talking to and hearing from, they're more into promoting catch and release, and they're more into, going to an area, let's just catch a few fish and move on. And so I really feel positive. I think we're on an upswing. I think we're going to see more fish. I mean, I can honestly say since, that the closure of the one fish, some of the fish that I've been able to, I felt good about releasing a lot of fish in the past month or two. And these are fish that normally, let's say last year, maybe would not have gotten released.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So in a way, I look back and say, God, I'm probably releasing twice as many fish as I would before, because, when it comes to redfish, the people, they like to take them home and eat them. There's no doubt about it.
I don't blame them.
And flounder too,
Mm-hmm.
Flounder trout, they want to take something home and eat it. They pay big money to go out on these charters, and you can't blame them. I mean, hey, we want to have a good fish fry. We want to have we got family in town, and we want to cook up some fish tonight. So you can't blame them for that. But I feel good that, wow, hey, I'm releasing a lot more keeper fish, and that's making me feel good.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, I think if we limit it to one per person, nobody has to apologize for taking their one. Nobody should. I think that's a manageable number, and we can continue to see the redfish thrive, especially the care that we're taking of the brood stock, which is so important and literally just has reached tremendous numbers here in Northeast Florida. David, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Ricky.
Okay, Captain David Voorhees, Funk and Wagnalls define symmetry as similar parts combined in perfect balance. Shimano and Strike Zone define symmetry as the perfect spinning combo for whatever you target this spring. You can't beat the balance and performance of the Shimano Symmetry spinners for freshwater and inshore saltwater. Outfits like Symmetry are the reason for shopping at Strike Zone. Not only are the Shimano Symmetry spinners the perfect balance between rod and reel, they're also on sale at Strike Zone for $99. You know, one of the biggest mistakes most anglers make is fishing outfits that are out of balance. If you try to balance your own Shimano outfit, you almost can't get the most out of your cast inshore or put the maximum pressure on a sea monster offshore. The symmetry between Strike Zone and Shimano, the perfect balance for all your fishing needs. Our thanks to David Boreas for Northeast Florida Report. Time to hit East Central. That means it's Jimmy Ross time. Cap, how we doing?
Doing fantastic this week, Rick.
Woo, boy, it's pretty good weather we got right now, isn't it?
We've had some pretty interesting weather. It's one of those ups and down roller coasters. We got wind one day, and then it goes calm and kind of flat and rainy the next. And it's one of those things you kind of roll with the punches and just call an audible on your fishing trips as you can. But I tell you, Rick, we've had.
If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. It'll change.
Wait 10 minutes, it will change. The one thing that's really, really good right now, though, is we have got a good, solid black drum bite in the region, and we've also got a good, solid snook bite in the region. Now, those two fish typically aren't mentioned in the same report as both being good at the same time. But so let me quantify what I'm talking about here. Snook at Sebastian Inlet, especially at night, have been really good this week. Canaveral, so-so. Ponce Inlet, inside, not at the inlet itself, but inside in the backwaters, has been really good this week. I talked to guys that are throwing small swim baits, little 2-inch, 3-inch swim baits, little tiny things like the little Storm, where the lead head is fully encapsulated by the plastic. That style of swim bait, and they are catching upwards of 20 snook in a trip in a morning. And so they're getting out of the wind. They're working with the tides up there. The incoming tide seems to be just a little bit better than the outgoing tide. And they're doing really, really good in the backwaters around Edgewater, even all the way down as far as Oak Hill and, some of those docks and little residential canals, deeper cuts around some of the mangroves. I'm really surprised at the snook bite in the northern part of my region. Now, the black drum bite at the rock jetties up there, which is where you would normally expect the snook to be at Ponce Inlet, that's where they're getting the black drum. In the river and lagoon system, the Mosquito Lagoon and the Indian River in particular, we're finding big schools of big black drum. I had a couple of trips this past week where we've been getting 30 to 50 pound class drum. They're holding in deeper water, but you can still sight fish them on the days when it goes calm or relatively calm. You can see where they're stirring up the mud if it's not too calm, and then as long as there's sun. On the days that it's calm, they're coming to the top and they're floating. So we've got schools of floating black drums in the lagoon system. Oh, yeah, and we're sight casting to them with a live shrimp.
I'll be darned. Why are they floating? I don't get that.
I think it's spawning season.
I see.
Those fish are bigger than what we typically bring home for people to try and keep. So I haven't been cleaning them, but they're acting like they're in a spawning ritual. Plus, there's a better than average amount of shrimp in the northern lagoon system right now. And that, when I find them, a lot of times I actually see them chasing shrimp out of the water, and the shrimp are jumping and skipping out of the water to try and get away from them. So these schools, they're foraging around on the bottom, or in the bottom part of the school is foraging around on the bottom, but the fish that are up top floating are chasing those shrimp that are getting pushed up from the bottom. It's really, really interesting type scenario, and it's been a whole lot of fun to sight fish for those big drums.
Jimmy, I tell you what, there has been a tremendous number of shrimp in your area. I have a friend that captains one of the freezer plate boats, which means he can stay at sea a month at a time if he needs to. And he was down dragging off your coast near the beach, and I saw him come home, and I called him. I said, "How was it?" And he said, "I needed another day and a half." He said, I had a bearing go out, and he said we had to limp home. He said, but if I'd have stayed another day and a half, I'd have been maxed. And I said, "What do you think you have?" And he said, 70,000 pounds.
Wow. Yeah. There have been a lot of shrimp boats off the beach here the last couple of weeks, and that just proves that there's they wouldn't be there if there wasn't something to catch.
Oh, that's for sure. Hey, I want to throw a question at you, and I didn't brief you for this one, so don't be mad at me. All right, you and I are both love cobia fishing, and your area is cobia central. Well, I'm looking at two things, Jimmy. I'm looking at the fact that we've reduced the limit where it should be. 1 per person, 2 per boat, 36 inches, love it. I'm looking at the fact that 1,000 people a day move to Florida, and they all seem to want a cobia fish. And the technology is so good. The technology is so good now that they can all be proficient at it pretty quick. Give me a state of the union, Jimmy. Are we going to have more cobia in 5 years or less?
Rick, I think we're going to see exactly what has happened with the red snapper fishery. I personally think we're going to see an explosion in the number
bring it
of
on.
cobia.
Bring it right now. Please, Jesus.
We're going to see an explosion. And the reason is anytime that you reduce the numbers on the bag limit and increase the size limit, you're going to get a better quality fish when you bring it home. And the nice thing about what they've finally done is now you're not talking about a single boat that fishes every day, as an example, a charter vessel, bringing home 6 or even 8 fish with a 6-man limit plus the 2 crew members. You're not bringing 8 fish a day home. You're only bringing a maximum of 2. I think that's really, really going to be a big boost to the fishery. Hopefully, the rest of the Atlantic coast will, they'll see the same results that hopefully we're going to see. But I'll tell you, in my opinion, I'm going to call this a win. I'm going to say that they finally got something right.
They still got work to do on a few other species, by the way. But I
agree
with you. I think I think they got cobia right. Jimmy, as always, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I look forward to it, Rick.
Thank you, Jim. Captain Jim Ross from East Central Florida. Time to hit Stewart, my sailfish capital of the world. Now that we travel more to other countries, we've learned that may not be true, but it sure was believed that way for a long time. And let's check in with one Captain John Earhart. John, how we doing?
I'm good. Glad to be here, Rick.
Man, I tell you what, I just looked at my calendar. Won't be long till you and I'll be rubbing rails down there catching bait together.
I'm ready for it. We just got to wait a couple months, but the fishing's so good right now. It's just, as you can expect for February, there's a lot of days where unless you got a 60-foot boat, you're going to get shut out.
Yeah.
But leading up to these cold fronts, I tell everybody, if you can get out there the day before the front, you're going to have some awesome fishing, and the weather is going to allow you to get out there, and then it's going to get rough. So, we're going to have to wait a couple days. It's going to calm down again. But we've had pretty good fishing, not a lot of sailfish, but we're getting 3 or 4 trips. So, that's definitely worth getting out there to do that. And in between sailfish bites, we're still getting those jumbo blackfin tunas. So, you're getting some nice gaffer-sized blackfin tunas for the box. In the deeper water, we're occasionally getting like a 20 to 40-pound wahoo. A few mahis here and there, but I haven't really seen anything consistent. You get 1 or 2 every couple days. And as we get later into February, March, and April, we expect to see that migration of those big gaffer dolphins followed by those little peanuts, or vice versa.
Gotcha. Yeah, seems like most seasons the big fish come first, but sometimes it gets turned around. Sometimes we don't see them. I know I caught some beautiful dolphin down there last summer in July and August, and in May and June didn't do well. So I can't really figure out how that happens. But what's going on inshore?
Snook season just opened up, and the water temperatures have warmed up a little bit, and the snook fish has been pretty good. We've been catching a lot of keeper-sized fish, some overslot fish, a lot of jack crevalles mixed in, a few redfish here and there. As usual, they're catch and release, so it doesn't matter what size they are. We're going to be letting them go. But we've had good bait fishing for the snook. Nighttime around the bridges, throwing artificials like flare hawks, spool techs, anything that gets down a little bit in the water column is going to get those bigger snook right now.
John, are we making any progress with grass? Are we starting to see any sprouts on Sailfish Flats, or is there just nothing?
I'm not going to say there's nothing, but there ain't much of anything, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense, I'm afraid.
I think that we're going in the right direction, but it's going to be a little while. It takes a while for that stuff to come back. And, with these high winds and these strong seas, that turns up the river too. And it's not pollution or anything, but you get that real sandy, silty water. And that certainly doesn't help because that clouds up the water column and it doesn't allow that seagrass to grow. It needs some sunlight to really grow. So hopefully we'll have a calm spring and a calm summer and very few charges. And I think that could really rejuvenate the river.
Any word on the pompano yet?
Pompano fishing's been pretty consistent all the last month and this month. The Sailfish Flats have been holding good numbers of pompano. It seems like the outgoing tide's been better, but we've been getting them on both tides. Sometimes you just got to drive around the Sailfish Flats until you skip a couple and then set out the bait rigs or start jigging with those pompano jigs.
Isn't it nice of them to skip for us? I mean, all you got to do is ride around till you see one skip in your wake, and there they are.
The only thing better than seeing them skip is when they skip right into my boat, Rick, and I just drop them right in the cooler.
I've never had that happen. I'd love to see that. I've never had that happen. John, as always, we appreciate your report so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to y'all next week.
I think you got a few days coming when the big boats are going to be able to handle the sailfish. I'll be anxious to hear. We'll talk with you next week, Captain John Earhart. I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great Stewart report. Now, we're going to head to the Dean of Florida Charter Boat Captains. As good as they get in this state, folks. Captain Ray Rocher out of Miami. Raymond, how are you?
I am excellent. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Doing just wonderful. It's warmed up here a little bit. I don't have a jacket on tonight. I feel good. Tell me about your fishing this week.
Well, this week it turned a little bit slower. The week before sail fishing was really good, and it was kind of interesting. It was good all of a sudden everywhere. And then as quickly as they showed up, they kind of left. So, we're catching a sail here and there, but no big numbers. Kind of making up for it with bottom fishing. So part of that, I think, change was a reduction of current. So, when the current was moving pretty fast, we had more pelagic, more tunas, dolphin, and sails. And now current slowed down, so we've become bottom fishermen.
I want you to teach me something, and I keep meaning to ask you this. That's the only reason I interrupted. All right, when I fish off a Stewart for sailfish in the summertime, Here's my drill. My first stop is out in 400 feet of water over the St. Lucie hump. And the reason I stopped there is to judge my current. And Ray, it seems to me that if I've got 1 knot of current, no knots of current, it's probably not going to matter where I fish. I'm in for a real long day. If I've got 5 knots of current, I better move inshore. I need to get inshore that current. To me, if I'm sitting in 3 knots of tide, that's about where I want to be. Talk to me and tell me where I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think that, somewhere between a knot and 3 knots is kind of that happy medium. When that current is really, really ripping, I'm with you. I typically move in shallower, and as you get shallower, you usually lose some current. So that's kind of the game.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you say your bottom fishing's been good?
Yeah, not bad. We've actually had a bunch of red snapper up to over 20 pounds, and we've caught more legal black groupers, in the last 2 weeks than we've seen in the last 2 months. And, it's just the way it goes.
Hey, this is none of my business, but do you have a swimming pool?
I do.
The red snapper will be there next. I mean, they're everywhere else, Ray.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
We took a wounded warrior out this week in Jacksonville on my boat, and I was mean enough to buy a box of Boston mackerel and hook them up and drop them on some great big ledges I know. He was like, no more, please. they're out. I'm sorry?
I was going to say, wait a second. They're almost extinct.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Only thing extinct around here is my hair. I got a question for you. All right.
Uh-huh.
I always turn to you when I need sailfish advice. It seems to me like I'm seeing fewer people pull fish into the boat, take a picture, and then throw them back. I'm seeing fewer people snatching on the leader to try to get a release. It looks to me like we're getting better at letting them go and letting them go in good shape. Now, conversely to that, 1,000 people a day plus move to Florida, and it seems like they all want to catch sailfish. Give me a state of the union. Are we going to see more sailfish in 5 years or fewer?
I am hopeful that it'll be more because, when I was a kid, we ate them. I mean, it was very routine. My grandfather, I go to Grandpa's house and we almost always had some sailfish and smoked sailfish. And that has kind of gotten to the point where you rarely ever see anybody keep a sail nowadays. I mean, if we have one die, it's obvious that's better. It's a better outcome than just let them sink to the bottom. But, like you said, we're, everybody's using circle hooks for the most part. We're doing all the right things. And you look at 2 weeks ago, the kill box in the Middle Keys caught 55 sailfish in 2 days.
Wow.
For that Florida Cup tournament, they caught 32 and 23. And, that's a great sign. It means you do get under the right conditions, still get good numbers of fish. 55 fish in 2 days is just phenomenal, and they're going to be hard to beat. So congratulations to those guys. But, the abundance of boats and more people, and the other thing that, another factor is technology, right? Today we have more methods to teach people quickly how to catch fish. So that is something that will be a factor. But I would say the one thing that's going to dictate a lot of that the outcome to that answer is bait supply.
I
see. So the more we do habitat and bait stock is, I think, really, if it's the old saying, if you chum, they will come, right? You feed, if there's enough food, then the fish will be there. I was on the phone today with a guy from the Keys who said, I rode the tower. It was calm, and I rode for hours and never saw a ballyhoo. And, we never saw sailfish. And I think that correlation exists in a lot of ecosystems, whether you're fishing Miami and there's, more goggle eyes and blue runners and cigar minnows, or you're up in Stewart, there's more herring and, there's sardines. It doesn't really matter what the food of choice is. The fish, the predators follow the prey. And that's a big deal in my book.
Well, you and I have discussed it before. We're both deer hunters. You're a deer hunter, and you're a deer hunter. I sit in the woods, and
Yeah.
When we have a real good acorn stock, almost all our does will drop twins.
Correct.
And when we have no acorns, some of them don't drop at all, or they drop one. I mean, does that correlate to the ocean? When there's more food, do we produce more predators?
I think it's exactly the same.
Aha. Okay. All right. Well,
I do. Yeah. You got to have, healthy bodies produce healthy babies.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't change anywhere in the spectrum of life. So, Wild Oceans, Tim Choate, it's one organization, and I've seen like the Billfish Foundation start focusing on that, and the IGFA also, where now you hear more talk about protecting the bait populations. And I think they're heading in the right direction. And the more we do to protect bait populations, the more we're going to really enhance our predators population, whatever that predator is. And so, it's not a simple, easy problem to solve, but it is certainly worth trying.
Love it. Absolutely. All right. I like your optimism, Cap. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir.
I look forward to it. Captain Ray Rocher from the Miss Brit Fleet in Miami, Florida. Now, time to hit the Keys. It's never a bad day in Kokomo. Let's check in at Bud and Mary's with one Captain Brandon Storn. Bean, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Rick. How you been?
Good. Talk to me. What's going on in Alamorada?
Well, spring has sprung. We just had a mini cold front yesterday. It shouldn't really shake things up too much, but it definitely feels like spring has sprung. I've seen a good body of tarpon showing up, and they're acting happy. Very exciting to see. Also, those cobia has been still floating around in the Gulf. Still getting into those pretty consistently. But also we've been also having a really good snook bite. A few redfish have been showing up. But I think that right now I'm starting to gear everything towards tarpon.
Mm-hmm. Now, is this early, Bean, or right on time, or how do they stack up for coming in this time of year?
I mean, I think it just depends on the groundhog. Is the groundhog going to go in his hole, or is he going to see a shadow, or what? It just really depends on just kind of the pattern of, I guess, wind direction and also water temperature. But the water temperature is getting really happy for them around town. It's been around 76, 77 degrees, which will make them very happy fish. I've had a couple of days of some consistent southeast winds, which I bet has been blowing them in. And, this is, I would say, a little early, but it seems like the trend that it's been happening a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It seems like everything's just a little bit earlier. Well, that's outstanding. You hear anything offshore from the big boats? Are they able to make it, or has it been too tough?
No, they, of course, yesterday was crazy windy. I mean, 25, 30 knots. But before that, been a few wahoo and sailfish being caught coming up on that moon, and a little bit prefrontal conditions, and a couple African pompos being caught. Of course, they've been catching their snappers for dinner as well. But also there's been some blackfin that pushed into the edge of the reef, and that's pretty much what's been going offshore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you. Well, there's nothing wrong with that report. Sounds like you guys
lots of kingfish.
Really?
In my books, too many kingfish.
Be careful up here. These guys live and die with kingfish tournaments up here in Northeast Florida. Don't try and tell them there's such a thing as too many kingfish.
I'm not going to. No more comment. My gear. I can't get past them.
Okay. I got to tell you a quick one. All right, we're going too long, but I got to tell you a quick one anyway. My buddy up here that does the radio show with me on Saturdays just lives for kingfish tournaments. He thinks a 40-pound kingfish the greatest animal God ever made. Well, his girlfriend had never caught a sail, so they came down and joined me for a day off Stewart last summer. And we're having a good day, and we get to 9. And we got 4 baits left, all right? So I said, okay, guys, we're going to run down south a mile and a half, set up, and make that pull one more time with these last 4 baits we got and see if we can hit double digits. So we go running down there, drop the baits in the water, and about a 30-pound kingfish skyrockets with one of the outrigger baits. My grandson doesn't even crack a smile. He just goes, damn Walmart sailfish. And I about fell out of the tower. I couldn't believe it.
Hey, you know what? They are great. Hey, they're fun fish to catch. I mean, they feel some drag. They are fun. It can when you're trying to target other things like blackfins and sails, they can be pretty frustrating some days.
Yep. I tell you what, on my boat, they shall ever be known as Walmart sailfish. Thank you, Bean. Yeah. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, Rick. Thank you.
Okay, buddy.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils.
What?
Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Brandon Storn for a great Alamorado report. Now let's hit Southwest Florida. Snook Stamp Charters and one Captain Greg Stamper. Snooky, how we doing?
Doing good, Rick. Man, a couple times this week, and I'm about 2 weeks away from having my own boat again, so I'm loving life.
I was talking about you this week. We had one of the nicer young men. I was doing a sea trial for him out of Inglis, Florida on a Young 27. He's buying one. His house was destroyed. His boat was destroyed. Everything that could be destroyed was destroyed. And I was telling him about your dilemma down there, and he said, I hear it every day. It's just a whole new world down around Sanibel Island.
It's all good.
Yep.
I'll tell you, fishing around here right now has been okay overall. We had a little cold front come through. Wasn't that bad. I was out just a few hours ago, and the water got to 68, which for us, that's not too bad. We'd like to see it a little warmer. 72 is kind of my number. Give me above that, and I think life's good. But, we had some winds, strong winds, Rick, 30 mile an hour. Mm-hmm. So it mucks up the shallow water. Now, when you muck up the shallow water, you still kind of know where the fish should be, so it takes a little longer to catch them. We did some trout today. We did some mangrove snappers. The sheephead fishing overall, quite honestly, this year has not been that good, and we tried. We did some docks. We did some stuff near the passes where the water's deeper at those low tides. But what I'm looking forward to is a few 30 days from now where these super low tides in the morning for us become a normal zero mean, and then those super low tides or low tides will be in the afternoon, and that's when everything here starts to pop.
Greg, I just had a shocking thought. This'll blow you right out of your deck shoes. You said you had a whole lot of wind the last couple of days. What direction was it out of?
So we had a lot of north. We had northwest in the beginning, and then north, and now it's northeast east. So it's going to slow down soon. And then we love south. Give me south, southwest, and I'm like, let's go fish.
Hold on now. Don't get away from me. We had a bunch of north wind like yesterday and the day before. What was the moon?
It's right on the full, baby. It's right where it would be. A couple days ago, it would have been really, really good. Now it's freaking blowing like you said that a long time ago. You talked about that.
I'm telling you.
Talked about full moon and wind.
Full moon brings north wind, and the meteorologists can argue with me from here to who come next. Every good northeaster, you look up in the sky and tell me if you don't see a big round yellow circle. Hey, I got a question.
I'm gonna pay attention.
I got a question for you.
All right.
We're taking better care of triple tail than we ever have. We've raised the size limit. We've lowered the bag limit. We've done what we can do, and people are getting really good about catch and release. But boy, there's a lot more people get involved in triple tail every year. 5 years from now, do you see it better, or are we putting too much pressure on them?
We're putting way too much pressure on them, Rick. Not to discount triple tail, but they're not very smart.
Right.
You run across them, and people don't realize, like, if you educate them when they're small, they do learn, but as soon as they're the right size, they get plucked. Will there be more or less in 5 years? I'm going to go with less.
Okay. And I can understand why, too, because when I would bring a triple tail to the dock here 5 years ago, it would be like, what is that? Now.
Yeah, Rick.
Now
well,
it's.
I'll give you one example, and not to be long-winded with you, but when I was a kid and I'd go down to Everglades National Park and fish flamingo on a regular basis, the FWC would check our coolers. All they wanted to see was our snapper. If we kept the snook back then, they wanted to see that our redfish. They would see a triple tail, and they were like, no, we don't need to see those. But we have 4 of them in our cooler.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole lot more people that are learning a whole lot more about triple tail. I think you're right, and I think we're going to have to get even tougher and make stronger laws for them, because now, instead of saying, what's that, a guy's going to say, did you get that off those crab buoys south of the pier? I mean, everybody's doing it.
How deep were you?
Right. Everybody's doing it. Cap, thanks for a great report, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. Tight line, Jack.
Captain Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters in Southwest Florida. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report. Time to hit West Central and one Captain Ray Markham. Raymond, what's going on?
I'm bracing for weather.
Oh, come on now. We're going to...
Hey, we just got off of 25-mile-an-hour winds, and now we're just going to have rain. So it's all right. Maybe another hour or so, we'll get some rain coming through. But I think things are going to start looking up a little bit. I don't care whether Hoosie Watsy saw his shadow or whatever, but not too many shadows out on the boat. So
you mean Puxatawny pufferfish? Is that who you're talking about?
You got it. You got it. That's the only thing that survived, I believe.
That could be.
That's the lizardfish and the catfish and the ladyfish.
Yep.
But anyway, I don't know. Fishing's been pretty decent. It's scattered trout. They have not been in like huge schools for what I can find. I know there's a few guys that have, and when they found them, they found a wad, and they just sit there and catch them and catch them and catch them. I'm thinking to myself, catch what you need and leave. We get enough issues with them, And but there's still some redfish around. It seems to me that there's been a pattern that's been going on for several months, and I say several months, probably pretty much 6 months. The other side of the bay, the eastern side of Tampa Bay, has held some redfish on a consistent basis on the South Shore, just north of Joe Bay, all the way up to Apollo Beach, basically. If you get up in the Alafaya River and Little Manatee River, you're going to find a bunch of snook. They poked out a little bit during the time it got warm here, and I would guess that they're probably, with a little bit of weather going, they're going to kind of hang until the next big thing comes. So the snook fishing's been okay for the guys that are actually targeting them. There's been a few guys that are catching some pompano along the beaches. They're catching some whiting in the trough. You get down the south end of Pinellas, and they're doing fairly well with some mackerel. It's not setting the world on fire, and it's still pretty early yet, but they're still catching a few mackerel down there. The guys down in Sarasota are doing pretty good on average with just about everything across the board. I mean, they've caught some redfish and trout and snook, even a couple of flounder, which, you know, they weren't bragging. They released them, but still. And the offshore guys, they are just still crushing red grouper. Hogfish anywhere from 30 to about 80 feet have been very good. And, well, let's see. They're catching quite a few snapper, a variety, anywhere from vermilions and lanes and mangroves. Believe it or not, and they're still catching red snapper well offshore. They're not keeping them, but, you know, it is what it is. When you want them, you don't catch them. When you don't want them.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's always the way. No, you're right. You're right. Ray, I want to ask you a question. You are one of the better trout fishermen I've ever known, and I know that you've certainly struggled with all the red tides and all this stuff. But take the red tide aspect out of it for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're getting better. I know the limits are better than they used to be, and I think we're getting better at teaching a release ethic than we used to have, instead of taking home every trout you can. Having said that, 1,000 people a day move to Florida. Do you see our trout fishing better in 5 years or not as good as it is?
Well, I don't see it as good.
Okay.
And I hate to be the dark shadow going across this whole thing, but you know, you already said, okay, take the red tide thing out of it. But in addition to red tide, we have a habitat loss here that has been devastating, in my opinion, and it's going to take more than 5 years to get it back to a decent place, you know, for these fish to, you know, grow up and move back in and make babies and do the things that they normally would do. And I just think it's going to take a lot more time. And with new people coming in, it's an every single day thing of having to re-educate or educate in the case where they don't know everything that there is to know about fish, not just trout, not just redfish, but all fish in general, because some of these people are coming from up north where they don't have speckled trout, they don't have snook, they probably don't have redfish. You know, and on the inshore thing, you know, it's going to be like that. You get guys that are coastal people that are up in the Carolinas and all, and they're used to that. But whether they're used to, you know, the same kinds of things that we do to release fish and reduce the release mortality, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what goes on in the other states.
Well, I can tell you that I came back from a trip to Minnesota not too long ago to fish with some guys from the In Fisherman magazine up there, and they had a very strong release ethic, and everybody on the lake seemed to. I didn't see a handful of fish kept, and there were plenty of fish caught. So maybe they're bringing a good release ethic with them.
Well, you know, in the far reaches of the upper north end and in Canada, the release effort, it is a thing they just normally do. Because quite frankly, their limits are like very slim compared to what we are down here. And I had a guy just posting some pictures on Facebook of a bunch of trout and redfish that they caught. I'm asking him, like, well, what's the limit on your trout? He goes, 15.
That's just ridiculous.
It's like, you know, in a bordering state where we're either supposed to keep 3 or 5 or whatever the region that you're in is, and to be boarded, I mean, 100 feet away in Georgia, and they can catch 15. You know, we need to get together with bordering states and come up with some sort of conclusion on exactly what is the fishery and what it isn't, and what it can be if it's changed.
And oh, by the way, while we're doing that, let's all get together and drag Louisiana into the 21st century kicking and screaming, shall we?
Good luck with that between Louisiana and Mississippi. Now, understanding that those two states are pretty low on the totem pole when it comes to people's income, and a lot of those people are subsistence fishing. You know, they're fishing to live, not just for a living or just for fun. They're doing it so they can have dinner tonight. Wow. And I kind of understand that, but, you know, you're killing the goose that laid the golden egg in our particular situation where we're, you know, people are doing this for recreation and you know, a bonus is taking home a fish or two, you know. So
yeah.
If
Ray, I got to tell you, I know a bunch of Louisiana guides that will not come in until each one of their passengers has their 25 trout. So, yeah, we got to drag them up into this century. All right, Cap, I appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir.
All right.
You bet.
Captain Ray Markham on the West Central. Academy Sports and Outdoors' mission is to provide fun for the whole family by carrying all the best gear from top brands including Columbia, Yeti, Costa, Penn, Shimano, and so many more at prices that you're going to love. Whether you're planning on spending the day at the beach, hosting the friends in the backyard, reeling in a big fish, or gearing up for the game, Academy has a wide assortment of sports and outdoor products that will guarantee you that you're going to have fun out there. Hey, Academy has just opened their new store in Panama City, and look out, Tampa, here they come. You're next on the list. It's a dynamic and fun shopping experience while also offering convenient options such as buy online, pick up in-store, and free shipping on most online orders over $25. When shopping at Academy, customers are going to be able to take advantage of some great in-store services. How about they'll assemble your grill for you or your bike? How about scope mounting, bore sighting, line winding and spooling, propane exchanges? They've got the pros to get it done and the ability to purchase hunting and fishing licenses. With Academy's best price guarantee, if you find a better advertised price anywhere, not only will Academy match it, but they'll beat it by 5%. Until the new store in Tampa opens, you can shop online at academy.com or through Academy's mobile app. You can sign up for email alerts, receive digital ads, offers, and exchange with Academy's social media accounts. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. Our thanks to Ray Markham for a great West Central report. Now, let's move on up into the Big Bend. That's where the mayor of Homosassa lives, one William Toney. William, how are you?
Doing good, bud. Enjoying this fake spring weather in February, you know, so going from straight up winter to straight on summer. So we've had some really good inshore fishing as far as trout and redfish and pompano.
Hey, I got a question for you, William. Day before yesterday, you had a bunch of north wind like we all did yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you happen to look up in the sky at night?
All I saw was a big full moon as I shut my eyes.
No,
it wasn't a Chinese balloon, but it was a full moon, and I got a transom window that looks just out of my bedroom, and in the morning I can look up and see my palm tree and see if the wind's quaking it, so I know what it's like. But that moon last night was pretty bright, is all I can tell you.
It really was bright. I got to tell you talk about watching the palm trees to see if they're blowing. One of my favorite people in the world, a retired party boat captain out of here, tells me, he says, you guys tickle the heck out of me with your weather reports and satellites and all this stuff. And I said, why is that? He says, you get up in the morning and you look at your truck. If there's dew on it, you're going fishing. If there's no dew on it, you're not going fishing. And if there's too much dew on it, you're coming home early because it's going to storm that afternoon. Now, is there any further questions?
You know what? That rings true, Rick, because, you know, I have found, okay, in the morning while I'm loading my boat for my charters and my deck chairs, as I set them in there, I keep them inside the house. I set them in the boat, and the first one I set in over on the port side, I push it over toward the starboard side, and when there is no dew and is a dry, high pressure, those chairs will not slide.
Mm-hmm.
they stick to the deck. Now on a dewy morning, I can swing them right out the other side if I push too hard.
Yep.
And I can tell it's going to be a good fishing day. You know, you get that and that rings true. That captain knows his stuff.
He does indeed. And I would give anything to hear one of these meteorologists say, I woke up this morning, there's no dew on the truck, so it's probably windy outside. He pretty well count on that. How's your fishing been this week?
It's been good. You know, our inshore trout bite is great right now. In fact, it's almost like it's in April. A lot of our trout are getting on the incoming tide on the Rocky Point, sunning on that shallow water, using the D.O.A 5.5-inch glow jerk baits, fishing it real shallow. Now, there are some troughs around the edges that are about 4 to 5 feet deep, and those fish will fall into those troughs late at night or late evening or on extreme low tide. And what I've been doing is switching over to a Marilure watermelon red flake Little John with a red jig head and fishing it slow and low toward the bottom. Water temperatures did shoot up to 68 degrees this week. So here, you know, getting near that 70-degree mark. And as far as I can see right here in the future, it doesn't look like any cold snaps or anything that's going to affect that. But something that we did push through, and I wrote a report a couple weeks ago, we got some pompano in our area. If you Google Earth and you look at the Homosassa, Citrus County area here on the Big Bend, you'll see a lot of deep holes that dot between the mouth of Crystal River. There's one over there by Coon Gap in that area. There's one in the mouth of the Little Homosassa River, and a few more down toward Chesawiska, and that's where you'll find the pompano. And what I like to fish is when the tide is going out, those deep holes, and I'm talking deep, some are 18 or 20 foot, they'll make a big swirl. And when you see that swirl, and if you're catching Spanish mackerel way up in there and ladyfishes, pompano are in that hole.
I am of the opinion, William, that even so many years after the net ban, when we netted pompano in wholesale numbers and all, I'm of the opinion we're seeing an upswing in pompano. Do you agree?
I agree. It seems that every year we get them mostly in the winter months here, you know, December, January, February. And when it starts to warm up, we'll catch a few out on the flats and things like that. I think they head north of us, but they come in and get in those holes. And like I said, you'd never know it, but I tell you, sometimes I ran my boat across it, and if you watch and see one skip, you better stop and turn around and start fishing.
Yeah, it's nice of them. We were talking about that earlier. It's so nice of them to skip for us, so we know when they're
there. Here I am.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep, you got it.
Fine-eating fish they are.
Cap, that's a great report. We appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be down here in downtown Homosassa, and I will be taking some Advil tonight for my knees after crawling around, putting up the skirting. I can't wait to get in my boat. Usually I'm like, oh, boy, back to work. After working like this, yes, I am ready to get in that boat.
So you do not see a construction job in your future. Is that what you're telling me?
The only construction I see are my general contractors that charter me to fish. That's as close as I want to get to it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Cap. We'll talk with you next week. Cap William Toney. Now let's move into Northwest Florida and check in with K2 Sport Fishing, Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, we're doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. You remember Johnny Carson?
Yep.
You remember Karnak the Magnificent, right?
Of course, remember Karnak.
Okay, here we go. Northeast 20 knots. Okay?
Yeah.
What's the question? When was the last full moon, right?
No, the question is, how long are we tied to the dock? Because we ain't going out that.
That's for sure. But once again, the Northeaster came screaming in on that full moon like it does so often.
Yep. Yeah, it does. And it keeps Northeasters, Easters, anything keeps us tied to the dock if it's above 15.
Oh, us too. I mean, think about it over here. We got nothing, no land to break it over here. Tell me how your fishing was before it got here.
It was going good. Quite a bit of guys are getting offshore. We're getting their beeliners. They were getting their black snapper. They were doing well offshore. The sheep's head are getting good. So, they're supposed to be caught for sure.
Kevin, I don't really feel like, from talking to the guys all around the state, it looks to me like it's kind of a substandard sheep's head season. What do you think?
Well, one of my captains got a 21-incher this morning off the dock, so it's kind of hard to.
That's a good one, boy.
Yeah. It's still a little early for us with sheep's head, just like it's a little early for us pompano, so I'd hate to say substandard because, they're not quite here yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm gonna count on your thinking. I'm hoping that it's just that it's not time yet, and that's true. It's usually more the full moon in March and April when we see them bunching up. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. March is the time for us. Late February maybe, but definitely when March gets around, we got sheep's head here.
Yeah, I think I'm panicking a little early. What have you seen offshore besides beeliners?
Of course, we're throwing back more red snapper than we can shake a stick at. And, it's funny because, we talk about, catch and red snapper and how many we're throwing back versus how many we can keep. One day we'll have to have a discussion, but, we're catching plenty of fish. It's what people can take home. We're getting our porgies. We're getting our, a few black snapper here and there. We're getting a few lanes. So, we're getting some nice fish, but, we're throwing back more than we keep.
Mm-hmm. I know it. You know what a jolt head porgy is, don't you? What we call a white bone?
Yeah.
Do you get those over there?
Yes, we do.
Man, they're good eating.
Yep, we get those. We get the reds. We get occasional oddball, but that's mainly what we get.
Yeah, same here. Yep, we sure don't get to take home the boxes of bottom fish like we used to, but we got to remember there's a whole lot more of us than there used to be. Your redfish bite, Your redfish bite still strong?
The redfish bite kind of slowed down.
Huh.
The guys that I kind of rely on hearing from that are catching off the jetties and the seawalls, they're not getting as many. And with the blow we've had this weekend, it's kept all the boats tied up. So hard to say. But as soon as the water calms back down and clears back up, I think we'll be right back in business.
Yeah, I think it's going to, and I think it's going to start tomorrow. As always, Cap, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Captain Rick will be here next week.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Our thanks to Kevin Lanier for a great Northwest Florida. Now, can't go through Florida till we hit the Florida-Alabama border. Just shy of that is where we find Tyler Massey. Cap, how we doing?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Yeah, doing outstanding, my boy. How's your fishing?
Fishing's been pretty good. We got out a few days. We've having some decent weather. So, inshore still mostly. It's going to be like that for a few more weeks. But inshore fishing, we've been hitting the bridges still, finding some sheep's head. We're finding some redfish, some black drum mixed in. So it's been pretty good fishing for us. Live shrimp, live fiddler crabs have been working the best. But any of them bridges in the lower bay system have been producing pretty good for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the start of the sheep's head season. Does it seem like it's starting a little bit slow to you, Tyler, or is it you guys right about on track?
I think we're on track right now. Maybe even a little better than the last few years. Whether they're just biting a little better for us or there's actually more fish, I'm not really sure. But it seems like people who are giving it a decent effort are picking off a few. Not having to try a whole lot of spots to catch a couple and get a few bites. So, I'm thinking that hopefully it seems like over here we're going to have a good spring run.
That's outstanding. Have you had any weather for any of the Wahoo guys to give it a shot?
Yeah, a couple of guys. None of our boats made it out directly, but another guy who does offshore charters, he made it out to the FAD area. The closest FAD is in the high 50s, from Pensacola Pass, a little further from Destin. And he actually caught, I want to say, 5 or 6 wahoos and another 5 or 6 nice dolphins. So he had a good trip. They're still been hanging around. That's kind of, the dolphin hanging around this part of the year is not completely normal. But the FADs have been producing, and that's just pulling your lip baits, your big Rapala X wraps or stretch 30s, big lip plug, and then also you can also pull, some rigged ballyhoos around too. So, if you can make it out there, we get a little weather thing. It's still been worth it, and there's still been some fish around.
Yeah, are you guys seeing a lot of those new Nomad lures in your fishery?
Yeah, definitely, and I like some of those for sure too. I like they have pinks and purples and good patterns. I think for wahoos and big king mackerels and that kind of stuff, and I think they work pretty well.
Yeah, I've been pleased with the ones that I've pulled. We've done pretty well on blackfin tuna with the small ones too. Tyler, if you want to give one of those a shot, they've been doing quite well for us. Well, that's good news. It sounds to me like your fishing has been pretty good. Now, I would assume that pretty soon it's going to be full on wahoo time for you guys come next month, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I think from now until then it's going to be until it gets real hot. I think it's going to be pretty productive. And these fads really just changed the game for us. As far as having a place you have a good shot to catch one instead of pulling lures over bottom like what we used to do. Fishing the edges and the drop offs and that over that 200 foot. So it's just been it's just really a game changer for us. In the Northern Gulf. Real
quick, what are your fads constructed of?
So it's like they're all buoys of some sort.
Right.
A couple of them are more underwater than above water. So, short piece above the water, and it goes down 12 or 14 feet underwater. And then a couple of them look more just like a regular buoy, and a couple of them have like weather instruments on them.
Right.
So
right.
They have weather. They give information to NOAA or whoever keeps up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just buoys, really, and they're all over 1,000 foot of water.
And that's way cool. That's way cool. And I have no doubt that the cable or the chain or whatever it is that goes all the way to that bottom creates a total feeding zone all the way from the top to the bottom. I mean, that's
definitely.
That's absolutely cool. Tyler, as always, buddy, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Rick. We'll see you.
Okay, Tyler, thanks so much. And Tyler Massey puts a wrap on what has been a busy trip around the state tonight. You know what I really enjoyed this time? I was really happy to hear so much optimism. David Borys thinks we're going to see more redfish in the next 5 or 6 years. Jim Ross is convinced we've got a cobia boom coming with those new regulations. Ray Rocher loves the future of sailfish. I tell you what, if you haven't learned to offshore fish, maybe it's time you take it up. I sure hope you get hooked just like we have. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company. That's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the reel.